Call this meeting of the Church Civil of Universal City Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. That this meeting has been duly called and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is now 6:01. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Well, that was one of the more in unison Texas flag recitations I've heard in a long time. So I don't know if we're getting better or if we just got lucky. First of all, welcome very much for everybody showing up. Sort of exciting times. Budget, as always, has a lot of issues, and then we have the state lawmakers doing their things, but we'll control what we control here, the number of students and the budget process. And so thank you very much, Dr. Gibson.
Yeah, so we're going to do our best. Thank you, Mr. Westbrook. It's 6:03, so we're going to try to, we've got the cadence of it to look at 7:30. I think there's the material here for 7:30. Now, maybe some questions probably will be, that's okay. So we're going, if it's all right, we're going to proceed pretty quickly. Everybody's pretty engaged in what's going on, so we don't want to just restate things. But things have happened as recently as 6 minutes ago that I'll share a text. The conferees were just named for the Senate substitute for House Bill 3 about 6 minutes ago, so we'll talk about that. Now it's down to going into conference committee and what that's going to look like. So tonight, the picture goes from macro to begin with, the information on the EPP and the 10-year master plan and the district fund balance are, there's no big changes there. It's just as a reminder of like what are these big picture things that are sitting out there that impact our M&O. We'll run through that real quickly, then we'll go into a legislative update and kind of give a side by side of, again, where we see it as of 6 minutes ago. And then because the House and the Senate are so far apart, we've got two budget scenarios basically to look at, and we're just going to call it a no new money. We're just going to use zero as one of them, and then we're going to show the $8 million that is in the original version of HB3, and then what would happen if there was, by some miracle, and it's looking less and less likely at this point, that HB3 did get approved. And when it goes into committee, typically, if you've got a high number going in and you've got a low number going in, it can be, it's usually some number in between. One of the challenges, without just diving into the legislative update now, but I'll just say this, but one of the challenges that we're, I think, looking at is where there are so many, my term, poison pills, thrown in the bill that it completely falls off the track. And it's just we're done, no agreement, we're out. So HB3 dies. And I think that is, I was hoping tonight to communicate with 2 or 3 weeks left in the 3 weeks left in the session, to not communicate that that was even a possibility. Like, the session started with Kumbaya, they had a few rounds of blows, now it's coming back to conference committees, and we're gonna get this hammered out, but it looks more like blows are coming. So I think it's prudent, we have to take as an option of what if it all falls apart. Because what we don't want to do is have our meeting, I think, on May the 28th, and our board here for the first time that it all fell apart. I know some of you are watching it minute by minute, but we believe it's our job to say, okay, wait a minute, what if it does fall apart? So we need to get ready for that. So that's the introduction. Wayne, you're going to hit high, fast on EPP, 10-year facility master plan. There's one little tweak in there that we're considering right now that he wants to talk about, and then where we are with our fund balance, and then we'll go to legislative update. And we're working out of the packet that has the working agenda. And all I did just now is just run through the working agenda. That's all I did.
So apologies, the drafts are still on there, so they didn't find their way off. This is the agenda for tonight, and as you can see, as we're going to go through there, I've asked JD Mosley, Mr. Mosley, to come up here just to go over on page 2 the EPP layout, and then we will go into the facility master plan piece. So JD was going to give the overview of this as he has done in the past.
So kind of as we're talking, the first 2 documents in your packet there are long-range plans, and the first long-range plan we're looking at is our expenditure projection plan. This is the plan that we have funded through our M&O budget. These needs are developed through a multi-departmental collaboration in bi-weekly meetings. The items that are incorporated in there are almost all replacements of existing equipment and facilities. So that's what our 10-year plan looks like for expenditure projection plan.
So at the bottom, you'll see by year, the totals going across by year. It's not a cumulative, that's by per year. So as you go across, it's just an addition each time we go through there. If it gets deferred or some of that stuff doesn't happen in those years. And again, through the breakdown, as JD mentioned, this is through the facilities team and the committee working together, the team working together towards those items that fall on this list. Some of those are challenged very strongly, and some get placed on there, and some find another way or gets moved down the line as well. So
if you, that 1920 it's a big number that reflects not just 1920, but deferments of 18, 19, and 17, 18.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's why it's large, and you kind of stare at that,
We-
get paralysis by analysis,
Yeah.
but that's how I got there.
We've tried to kind of prioritize things and as we could shift some things, so not all of it made to 1920, but most of it's still on that 1920 year.
So to jump to a piece of the budget discussion here in a little bit, if we did, and I know I made it sound like it's not gonna happen, but for some reason, if we got closer to the what we're going to project is $8 million for us here in a little bit in HB3, one option was, if there is any latitude and all left in the bill, to not spend it all on recurring costs in 1920, if that makes sense, and then use that to buy down some of this, and then study in the fall recurring costs for 2021 and beyond, if we wound up with money. So I want to make sure everybody understands that concept. So let's just say hypothetically that we got $8 million from HB3, and there's only requirements for $4 million, to spend. Instead of spending the other $4 million on recurring costs, use that $4 million against one-time costs off of this list. You're only going to get that much money ever so often, and so and that plus the possibility of using some bond savings, we think we can get this number, get caught up, if you will. And just as a reminder, so last year we said if you don't do it this year, then next year that number gets bigger, and the year before that we said if you don't do it this year, the number so this represents those 3 years.
Yep, definitely.
And so again, this is stuff that's not built into our budget.
Correct.
These represent numbers that are outside of the normal departmental budgets.
Because they're larger, and so no
Right,
one carries
right.
that much in. So give us 3 examples.
So I can say on the maintenance side, there's $1 million in roofing repairs in there, which means we wouldn't fix anything else that year if we did that in our normal budget.
So, just run down a few of these. Well, what are the big ticket items in the technology?
So those are student devices. The majority of those that are in this total are 8, 9 years old, purchased in 2010, 2011. This also, our professional laptops, they're at end of life, they're starting to die. And so that, we had planned originally to split that between 2 years, but that's then combined.
Was this deferred? Was it deferred?
Half of it was from last year.
Okay, all right. What about the athletics? Well, let's go to fine arts, because really the next year, the 2020, 2021 is, what's the fine arts? What are the big ticket items in the fine arts?
Big ticket items there are uniform replacements. And we have a couple of, particularly in the dance area, that have kind of stacked up because of the past couple of years deferment. They were spread out. And instruments, replacement of instruments and things. And then the other big ticket item in 1920 is the replacement of the steel band and trailer.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so if you'll turn the page, the second document we're looking at is our long-range plan for facilities, and this plan is funded through our INS budget, through our bond program. We've seen the document, many times before. Our primary drivers for this document are student demographics, our growth projections, as well as financial planning. And so you'll see on there, you may notice that originally we had planned for a bond in 2019. You can see that bond is now moved out to 21, as well as a possible bond in 23. So those are where they are projected as of today. The financial planning part of it also takes into account the impact that opening these buildings has on our M&O budget as well. So you can kind of see that we're trying to look out for the future, 5, 6, 7 years about when those campuses would open, trying to lessen that impact on the M&O budget as those campuses open as well.
And just an add-on here on that top line there for elementary 9, just as a reminder, we could do possibly an accelerated schedule on that and it not open the same time as the junior high. It's just today, this is the reflection of the plan. So just keeping that in mind too. We could do like we did with Rose Garden. If we timed everything correct the way and it was favorable like Rose Garden was, we could actually open that in 23, or it could slide to 25 as well. So that's available to us as well as flexibility.
I think that's one of the reasons we always have draft on this, right? Is because
That's right.
we're always watching the numbers to see where those most appropriately should open. So.
When are we gonna hit a critical point on numbers? Like, when will we know? I know the demographics come in all the time, and I know we have projections, but at what point do we know, whether, okay, we've gotta go forward with this?
Yeah, so the red boxes right now, we believe reflect, if you go, let's just use Open High School 3. So if you go down below to the high school number, since we're saying that is going to happen at 3,000, your two traditional ones on here are at 6,000. So that's I guess our way to answer that. And then JD, if you won't look on the back of that page, just so where we get that is on the school design standards. So if that's when, in that case, well, junior high and high school, it's kind of easy math, because it's going to be the third one, and so it's when are we a third beyond, a third of the total beyond, the capacity, and then it's time to open the next one. So this just simply reflects that design standard.
And those formal trigger points would be along your October snapshot time, and then again during your third quarter reporting in January, during the CCAC when we do the formal reporting on that. So we will have that for 19 and then the start of 20, and we can kind of see what's going on out there and if there's a movement that's needed or if this is still solidified for that. And we watch those other quarterly reports come in as well. So I think watching those data points and at that time is also critical for us.
So there, as JD said, this is an INS document. There's two big M&O drivers that this needs to, be in everybody's mind. One is kind of more obvious and the other's less obvious. The one that's more obvious is in the next 8 years, this shows us opening 4 campuses. And in a 4-year window, all 4 of them. So at some point, it's going to say in 4 years, you're opening 4 campuses. All right, so that has an M&O impact. So that, you have to hold that context to all of this. Then the other one is that as you get closer, we're not selling bonds right now. We're about to do some refinancing, so we're going to wind up on the phone with Moody's and Fitch and do all that, jump through all those hoops. They interestingly seem to have like a short memory, so it's almost like, what did you do the year prior? So if you hit, and not 2 years prior, it's just weird, not 3 years prior, you would think it. And if you hit M&O too hard in the same year that you're on the phone with them, your bond rating, can slip. Now I say that, there's an asterisk about it. You can demonstrate we had clear, it wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
We had clear thought, we were over, we knew we were over, we felt like we needed to spend it down to a certain, you can do that. And we've done that before, but it's usually, instead of an hour phone call, it's a 2-hour phone call, and you're just saying, no, that was our plan. So we would almost have to have the board have a discussion and it reflected in the minutes so that they're aware that, okay, we knew, eyes wide open, we're this much beyond 90 days, which is more than what's required. And so it wasn't an accident. We had a lot of meetings and we spent it on a targeted thing. And anyway, there's that impact to it. So I just think everybody, and that has an M&O.
Did we ever determine what that number was though compared to housing?
So next page,
Oh,
is that right?
sorry.
No.
But I think that just moves us to fund balance is all
Right.
I'm saying. Okay.
So then, thank you, JD. So
No, you don't have to read this.
yeah, just in case.
So
then-
I had to call, yeah.
So then on the next page, this shows on the top chart is the 199, our general op fund balance chart, up through March. These are audited and determined to be from March on there. So just looking at that far right column, there's some things in that where there's note number 2. that takes down in there, that includes the inventory and then some construction and capital expenditure monies that are set aside. Adding that to the next ending fund balance assigned from previous, you have, there's about $41 million. Then you can see the previous, right below the 41 in parentheses, the 142,662. So that was the amount from the previous fund balance to current fund balance on added in there. So we had that, and then you have the 90 days operating, so that's the 30 million. So you subtract that out from the 35 at the top, and that leaves you the unassigned general fund at the bottom. So just cutting it short, if you were to just take the amounts that were available in that top box and the bottom box, it's roughly about $11 million. So the excess unassigned is there showing at 5.7 at the bottom of the 199.
And so right now TASB says we have to have that 90 days. When does that move to 75?
Yeah, so that's gonna be interesting, because I was just pulling up policy. So it says yearly unassigned general fund balance of 25% or 90 days. So they're making that assumption. So we might hear 25 days, and we might hear 90. I mean, we might hear 25%, and we might hear 90 days used interchangeably, but that's because that's the way the code is written. So that's kind of a quirk to me. Now, I don't know, I thought that was in first, that they were going to change that. And so I don't know how, it's a good question, because I don't know how that interplays with policy when and if they change that. So we'll have to research that. So right now, we're saying 90 days until we hear that this is all going to change. I mean,
Right.
I'm gonna invest to have a safety net of, no, this is all gonna change, and legal documents, you're good before we even consider it.
So TASB says the 90 days, but what I want to know is what Moody's is saying as far as in order to get a good bond rating. I know you kind of just walked through it a little bit, but still.
They don't, I've never heard either Moody's or Fitch use the word policy. And so it's just.
There's a suggestion, it's a suggestion.
Right, and it's almost like you gotta catch them on a good day, you know, and it's like, why did you even lower it? So so it's really not against the way we do business here, like there's this specified target. And that's part of the challenge, because we're trying to say, no, wait a minute, we're over what the target is. Well, says who? Well, says policy, says the state, you know, so we have to keep making that argument. So we'll use the 90 days, and we'll use this policy as our rationale for trying to describe it to them.
Right,
Just
so
keep your fingers crossed.
if I'm looking at the 5 million though, I know we probably need to put some aside for INS, right? Present just in case.
Well, that's the one below. That's the INS fund balance.
Okay.
Chart below there. So if you'll let me walk through that one
Okay,
real quick,
sorry.
and I'll try, that's okay. And I'll try to do this as clear as possible. This one's a little more, I'm still, I think I got it. I have my notes. So looking at it there, if you look at, starting again at the top box, that's from the previous year. And then our projected ending is right below it at 3.5. So then we used on the next line, the amount added, we needed 2.1 to assist with the payment on the INS side.
Okay.
So that took out of that 5.6, and then we still have, and I don't get lost in the 90 days or in the expenditures, because that's your payment there. So then it shows the deficit there of the 3.7, but that all goes back up to that line 2 showing the available fund balance on the INS side of 3.5. So if you recall, when we do our bonds, the bonds are, let me see if I can say this right. The tax availability, they're an unlimited tax bond, which means you have that's a quote unquote, but it gets us to the 50 cents, and we have to pass the 50-cent test to make that payment, that we can afford those payments. The district chooses to sit at about a 45 cent. So we impose that on ourselves. So we have the cushion of those 5 cents.
Which we've not exercised, we've just tried to live in that cushion, and it's getting more and more challenging to do that, I'll just say that.
And what I wanted to just try to help clear up, this is at the 45 cent. So yes, we are using some of our INS fund balance, but if need be, we could have, the district does have the authority to bump up the INS side to assist with that payment. So and in talking with our financial advisor, Samco, you know, Dwayne and I were talking, we don't really even need to have the fund balance set up. We choose to do that, and through policy as well. And then having
So
that,
let's
then,
pause for just a second. So that's it. It's not, we're talking about INS now, not
Right.
M&O, but he's saying quit panicking.
yes,
The law says that, you know, as it changes a little bit, you've got this window,
Right.
as long as you're under 50 cents, to pay your bill and not worry about hitting your INS fund balance, and certainly not your M&O fund
and
balance.
not your M&O. The thing that would happen
We've
on
just
that
not
last
done
part
that.
would be catastrophic economic event or a disaster in the area or something to that effect, to where the rates wouldn't even help us, that then we would have to go to the table above to do that. But he was like, that's not
So
even.
this is a budget workshop and not a facility workshop, so I'm gonna just stop this there, because we're gonna go down the INS rabbit trail. So what is available with the top chart, I'm gonna say it this way, to expend against that 9 million?
So-
if the board so desires, I'll say it that way.
So by policy, the superintendent or the chief financial officer can unassign the values that's available up on box 1. So, and that is about 5.4 of that 5.5. So adding the 5.4, and you take out there, it's roughly $11 million would be available to the district total.
And stay at 90 days.
Yes.
And then in the context of the 10-year plan, what I might wanna come back, what we wanna study, and I may wanna bring back to the board, I know we're talking about unassigning that amount to make it this 11 million. So, but back to the 10-year plan, does the board wanna consider assigning 4 million or something to hold against the opening of these 4 buildings in 4 years?
So to talk to that question, just for additional, for reference for the board and for the audience, Cibolo Valley Elementary, which is our prototype, which Rose Garden followed, as is this next one would follow as well. On the operational side, it's about 4.5 a year with a caveat. That's a full different, that's the running of the campus. So the startup of a new campus, some of those costs would already be embedded in the
We got
district.
half if we did it right.
Right,
Or
so
half
you'd
or
have
more.
2.5 million of costs for that new, on the operational side, for that new elementary.
So maybe, I wanna say this real concretely, those teachers, the majority of them are already teaching at another elementary, they're in a portable building.
Yeah.
So we're not buying a new teacher.
Right.
We're just moving them over to a classroom that's not a port, if that makes, now we're buying a new principal, we're buying a new counselor, we're buying a new librarian, we're buying a
Nurse.
custodian, we're buying a nurse.
Hems clerk.
Utilities.
The utilities just went up because the footprint went up, so that's what actually increased, so it's not the whole 4
Maintenance.
point.
Maintenance.
Right, maintenance cost, that's, so it's not the whole 4, it's, you
Right.
know, 50% of that if we did everything right. That's why we don't open buildings a 4th occupied, or a 3rd occupied, or even a half, when we try to open them at 60% capacity.
Am I interpreting this correctly, that each year we delay funding, it's about 4 to 6%?
It's probably pretty close to just construction.
Looking at the
escalation.
high school, we go from 188 to 198.
Oh, yes, sir,
Yeah.
that's the, your
Appreciation.
inflation rate,
Right.
thank you.
Right.
That's the inflation rate given to us on each year. So if you push the junior high at the next year, it'd be at approximately 69, so it's about $4 million for that
But
next
if you
year.
open it too soon, now we're spending
Now
too
you-
much.
You're
Yeah.
spending what you saved, because it's
That's
half,
right, and then
because it's
some.
half,
Because it's half full, that's exactly right, so that, you gotta thread a needle on
Right.
every
It's a
single
sweet
one of these,
spot.
that's why draft will never come off. Well, it did, wow. No, it didn't,
No,
it's draft.
it's there.
It's beating
Okay, we get the new numbers every quarter is my point, so it's just,
yeah.
it's your best estimate now beyond a year, right? You know, a year we feel pretty good at, and beyond that, and the further you get out, so this is just the best estimates today. So what, on the 11 million, I'm just saying we may not wanna consider all of that available because we may wanna set aside some for the opening of these schools. Is there, like, you know, what you would wanna do then is you wanna have, this is just like, a family, you know, Emma starts college, we've got the scholarship ready, we've got everything ready, but let's have a little bit in savings for incidentals. Because we don't know what we don't know might happen, you know, so now we've got enough in savings to, and we wouldn't even necessarily have to spend it. And I'm gonna bet the $6 million or $5 million that was in here assigned, that nobody knew why it was assigned. I would bet that at some point, we just can't find it in the documentation that the board said, we're about to open a bunch of buildings, we better set aside some money. And then no one remembered why it was set aside, and we made it work. I mean, obviously, we didn't touch the money, we made it work. But it's just a concept of, do you set aside a little bit when you hit these 4 years? So, and again, now we've kind of turned into a facility workshop, but there's this M&O impact, right? Because we're talking about the M&O fund balance.
And it looks to me like we're setting aside 5.4 and we're got a 5.7 cushion on the bottom.
Right.
Right.
I'm saying
At some point we ought to-
maybe don't consider both of
Right,
those for
at some point we
EDP,
ought to
just-
execute half of it.
Okay, that I think that you would get a lot of agreement from staff. I think we're at a point now where it is time to execute half of it. And maybe we wait till the session is over and see.
Have a little better.
Is it really bad? You know, if it's really bad, we may have to spend that on staying alive next year. But, I mean, before we go buy a new air conditioner, we may have to just keep the water from going over our nose. And I'm gonna say the D word, deficit budget, and use that to get through the year to give us some time to adjust. That's under worst case scenario, which you'll see in just a moment.
Yeah.
But then if it turns out okay, then I think we're ready to say we need to buy that 9,
Right.
so it doesn't become 14.
There's no sense carrying holding $5.5 million in two different places.
That's correct.
Above the 90 days.
And there was a while where I thought, well, let's just use the whole thing and erase the EPP, but then, you know, the more we look at opening buildings, it's like, okay, that's probably not a good idea. Good ideas come May the 28th may go completely out the window, so everybody just hold that thought. All right, are we good to just background information? Excellent background information.
Okay.
Great.
Then just wanted to, like, a little piece on letter D, property values, the preliminary. They're looking at some preliminary numbers that are coming through. We're looking at roughly falling in the middle, somewhere between the 5 to the 7, so we're kind of landing around the 6% on the appraised values there. Looking just by county, comparing Guadalupe County from the certified values of August of 18 to the preliminary of 19 here in April, we're looking at about a 6.8%. Now that's with preliminary, so you know it's kind of just holding there. So there's nothing out of the ordinary, I guess, is the talking point on that.
The Senate changed the cap law yesterday to start next year instead of 3 years from now. Yeah, so you can, now are we ready for a legislative update?
I think.
All right, any questions on the preliminary values then? So we're just getting reassurances that you can pretty much count on this. There's not a overabundance of appeals, and it's a normal amount of appeals, and you know it'll all settle down. Okay, so then starting with, let me make sure everybody in the room, our guests, okay. So we've been tracking here, and this is complicated, and I mentor 4 new superintendents this year, and I'm going to use this as an example. So today, the Senate substitute for House Bill 3, or yesterday, got passed out on a vote of 26 to 2. Now there's 31 members in the Senate. And so that means, and I think there's 12 Democrats and whatever the rest are Republicans. Okay, so that means that a bunch of Democrats voted for the Senate committee substitute of HB3, which we think is a bad bill. I mean, as it became. And so, you know, I have superintendents saying, well, why would a Democrat vote for that if they're completely against it. Well, the reason is here in a moment, they're gonna name conference committee members. And if you vote against it, and the lieutenant governor has already said, I want this out of the Senate, and I want it out now, I want it out today, and you vote no, then there's no way you're on the conference committee. Zero way. You are, so, not that they took a straw poll, but I guess anybody can count votes. So they've counted votes, they know it's gonna pass, so they do all they can with piling on amendments, but then they go ahead and vote yes for it, so that they can hopefully get on the conference committee to go in there and cooler heads prevail. So I just want to make, so that's very confusing to people, why don't, because I saw today, that all the Democrats voted for it, they must have fixed it, it's good. No, it's horrible. It's a poison pill headed to conference committee, and it's interesting, 2 Republicans voted against, or I think 1 Republican and 1 Democrat voted against it, and 3 Republicans voted present not voting, which is like saying no. But I don't want to say no because I might have a shot at getting on the conference committee, because I might have a radio show with the lieutenant governor on Friday afternoons at 3 in Houston. And so I might have a shot at getting on it. So instead of voting no, I'm going to vote present not voting. Okay, so I just want everybody to, and by the way, the reason those 3 gave for voting present, not voting, is because they said no way, no how, under any circumstance, is there $15 billion to spend on public education. And they all claim to be fiscal hawks, budget watchers, and I just think they're saying there's no way I can look at the mirror and send a bill to conference committee that we're anywhere from $5 to $6 billion short on. And so I don't want to oversimplify here, but no one did math. Or if they did math, they ignored it. I don't know which is worse, prior to all the votes on Monday and just getting it in conference committee. So that's kind of how this, so HB3 got the House got HB3 out early. They said we got $9 billion to use here. We're gonna give 3 to property tax reduction. We're gonna make a mandatory raise, 25% of the increase has to go to raises for all staff except administrators. And then we're not going to attach any other funding issues to it. Just keep coming down on the HB3. So then that's going to leave $4.5 billion available for districts' discretion to spend as they see fit. That translates into the runs that we've had from the House. Runs are the list of all the money. It's not a bad thing in this case. It's a good thing. You get to actually see what the money is. And it's about $8 million a year for the coming year, and about $9 million for the 2021. And they're just saying there's nothing hidden. Here's your bill, you're gonna get $8 million. And so, therefore we support HB3. And I know, I suspect some have probably talked to our state representatives about that, our House members, they feel confident that that's gonna pass, but I get it, because it's their bill and it's such a good bill. It's a 6-year-old bill. I mean, they've worked on it for 3 sessions. They had hearings in the interim and everything else. I'm not as confident. I just think it all got poisoned yesterday. So now I'm worried that it's not gonna, that it just all got poisoned by the Senate yesterday. That's really the bottom line. And I appreciate their optimism, the members of the House. I appreciate it a lot, but I worry that it's not pragmatic. They're just saying, nope, we're gonna win this fight, between us and the Senate. So now if you'll shift over to the far right, we're looking at the Senate bill. Dee did a good job of just putting, like every day, we had to read the Texas Tribune to get a new number up at the top, right? So I appreciate the fact that it was happening so fast, she just decided to leave the strike marks in there because we couldn't, every day, literally, we got a different number for what's available. What they passed out, they said, they estimate $15 billion. When 3 months ago they said that there was barely $7 billion available. And then they passed a bill that has $15 billion price tag on it. So if they're anywhere from 3 to 5 billion, depending on if is it the compression plus the requirement on the percent? Do you see what I'm saying? Or is it a variation thereof? They said that line, the -3 to 5 billion, was going to be erased by the sales tax swap. That's how they said that was gonna get a raise. The sales tax swap was killed 3 hours ago in the House. Done. So now, put a little star by that -3 to 5 billion, that's a bona fide hole. There's not something that, you know, someone's sleeve to throw down on that one. Then $4 billion is the price tag for the teacher and librarian raise. Sandra, you'll be happy to know they tried at the last minute to throw counselors in that too, so y'all's lobby did great, but it failed, sorry. Which would have been very confusing, because we have counselors on admin pay grade in our district, and so do some other districts, so that would have been I think that's what happened. They said a lot of people are already paying counselors like administrators. So anyway, that $4 billion is still in the bill, and it's a bona fide hole. So then, there are mandates of anywhere from $0 to $6 billion. We're still trying to calculate full day pre-kindergarten. I mean, there's some big ticket items in there that cost anywhere from $0 to $6 billion that are a bona fide hole.
You gotta, I mean, a large part of that $15 billion, it's gotta go toward STAR testing and increased testing. You know, they're talking about even testing down in the kindergarten level.
Right, that would be in that $0 to $6 billion.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So all of those requirements cost somewhere. People are trying to estimate right now. I wanna, because there's some confusion about this. So when the Senate finally sent district runs to us, actually I don't think we ever got an official copy, but somehow we all got unofficial copies. I think they're afraid to put it out officially. They showed basically an $8 million gain when they gave us the run. But what it did not show was the minus for the property tax and the minus for the raise. So, we would call, wait a minute, what about the property? Hey, Joe, have we run the calculation yet on it's not in there? I thought, this is the game that we're playing. So we had, no, it's not in there. So it wipes it all out. And now on what got submitted by the Senate, I mean, zero's looking pretty good on that bill. Because I'm wondering if we're gonna wind up having to pay for part of it if it all gets passed. It won't, I don't think it will, but as it's presented, why would you send it to conference committee in that big of a mess, I guess? Usually the legislative session is supposed to go like this, all these ideas, right? Less ideas, less ideas, less ideas, compromise, 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 boom, conference committee, right? We're in the conference committee and it's like this far apart. So what happened here is we went like this, and then the Senate went like this yesterday and put it all back in. And so now the conference committee has this swing of what we show on here, you know, the 4.5 billion available to somewhere over here, like maybe this thing costs $2 billion. So there's almost like a $6 billion swing between their negotiation.
Or like 10.
And I would argue that it's probably closer to 10, that's right. And that's what this morning Wayne and I were talking early, and the problem with that is if you widen the difference between the two going that far, and let's just say they get mad at each other and they walk away next week, and they say stick a dart in the middle of it and let's go home. Well, would you rather, if this is what you want and this is what you don't want, let me move this to here. Are you better with being in the middle? See, if I'm better with being in the middle here. If I move this line all the way over here and I'm in the middle, I'm over here. So if all of a sudden compromise becomes, I'm tired of this, we've been up here day and night, just split it in half and let's go. That's why we're worried that now our 8 goes to 7, goes to 6, goes to 5, goes to 4, and then there, you know, some scenarios are, I mean, do we come out with anything, you know, now? Oh, and then there's a little bit circulating that they just trash it all. Like instead of making it die that way, they just kill it and just say we can't afford it. And like literally pull HB3 completely out or kill it, however it needs to get killed now. In other words, we're not doing a comprehensive school finance bill. I would hope that they would try to throw a little bit of money in the basic allotment on their way out the door, right? But I mean, sometimes they get mad and let's go home and we'll deal with it in 2 years. And we've seen it before. We've seen it get punted down and we'll just fix it in 2 years. So having said all that, and we tried to give you today's article on, from the Tribune on the sales tax getting killed, and then we just heard a while ago that the House did the same thing. And then Representative Kempflin, I always appreciate him keeping us updated. He, just for your information, it's not in here, I apologize, because he just texted it to me. So Huberty, Ashby, King, Bernal, and Gonzalez are the House conferees for the committee. Yeah, so it's Huberty, Ashby, King, Republicans, and then Bernal and Gonzalez. Now, the two Democrats, Bernal and Gonzalez, were on House Public Ed. So they're not walking in cold. They know HB3 inside and out, upside and down, right? And then I can't remember if Ashby and King were on Public Ed, but of course Huberty's the author. It seems like to me they're not, but I think they're big on the budget writing and all, and so I think that's smart. They're on Ways and Means, and so I think that's smart to have Ways and Means in the room. How are we gonna pay for it, right? How are we gonna pay for it? And so I think that's, so that, to me, that it demonstrates that the House is really ready to get this thing sorted out. So now we're tick-tock, we're waiting to see who the conferees are from the Senate. Hopefully it'll be before 10 p.m. tonight, so I can go to sleep. And that's the legislative update, as we know it as of 7 minutes ago. We're good. So then, again, what we said earlier, and we'll just try to wrap up, is all of that is to say why this sheet has a front and a back. So what, you know, initially we, with pretty high hopes, started saying, what if we got HB3? You know, what, you know, so we basically took a lot of our information that we had already done for the TRE, and then our new analysis of staff, and you know, like that's, you know, let's don't be flat-footed May the 28th when we have $8 million more, right? So I'm gonna actually go backwards here, Wayne. So go to the HB3 side. So if you wanna look at the HB3 side, all right, go Wayne, you tell them why is it 10 instead of 7? On the
Okay, so it's got the blue bar at the top, so recommendation, HB3 projection. So what this budget shows is on the so on the left you have revenue, in the middle it's funds available for planning, and then on the right the possible expenditures and additions. So just talking it through, now this is on the basis of the budget moving forward to 15,975. So I think that was a difference of about 44 kids. So we're gonna uptick it.
It's not a growth. It's a growth of closer to 200 instead of a growth of 160.
160 something.
So we're projecting growth of 200 instead of growth of 160.
So
our demographer is comfortable with us
This next year.
this next year. If you remember, and that's not quite the mid, it's really close to what we've called mid before, right?
Right, well, the moderate, this moderate is actually what used to be the low before, so.
We've asked him 27 times, he's just saying that you're okay with that number, but that's kind of your, we've got a lot of things that may or may not happen this next year. I think a year from now, we'll know if 10 different things just get ramped up and going. They're trying to get water there, they're trying to get sewer there, you know, all of that right now.
So basically on the left, the revenue in green, blue, and then in red. You'll see in the middle of the 3 blue lines from the state formula, but then you see the state additional. So that was the infusion of the 8 million that Dr. Gibson was talking about earlier. So the 7.8 million then equates to the revenue there of the 132. You go to the gray in the middle, the funds available for planning without doing anything and moving forward, we're looking to have about 2.7 of additional revenue. Then you add in the 7.8 from the House bill projection there, and that is about $10.5 million available for planning for the upcoming year. Then going over to the right, the expenditures and additions, the raise is taken care of through the House bill plan, so that's struck out from the top there. What's below there then, special ed, lowercase a, elementary teachers, special ed, lowercase b, and then bus drivers and monitors, what has been approved by the board in April. And you can see the subtotal there of 2.6. So those are already done. So having that in there. And then you can see the secondary teachers for lowercase c, other staffings for lowercase d, the TASB salary recommendations. You can see the amounts associated with each one of those. All in going through there, and that's not yet been determined then for the admin pay scale adjustment if the district chooses to, because if you recall for the House bill, it's 25% of a pay raise for non-admin employees.
So there's 206 employees on the admin pay scale, which I think you listed some out.
They're on letter G at the bottom.
So counselors, coordinators, accountants, supervisors, managers, specialists, assessment staff, social workers, occupational therapists. Those are then there's some one-offs.
There's some one-offs there, but that encapsulates them there. So for the total additions of about 8.1 million, then the net available after that is 2.3.
And that 2.3 is what we're saying, if that, here, this is dream world. I mean, what's big, it feels like it's starting to become dream world. It was
Right.
hopeful world, a month ago.
Right.
Don't spend that 2.3 on recurring costs, spend it on EPP. Use in 1920. And then when you get ready for 2021, then you might consider embedding it.
Because that's the 9 million infusion would then be from that, on that plan.
Yeah, and by the way, in the plan that passed yesterday, I'm sorry, I'm back.
Go ahead.
Okay, the pay raise, help me on this, you found this today in the Trib article. So the pay raise, the way the state made that formula is you're only paid the $5,000 for the number of teachers and counselors that you have for the 18-19 school year.
Yeah.
Any increase you get.
That way they don't have to fund any growth.
That's exactly right.
So as growth goes up and we add teachers every single year, there's no funding for the additional ones after that. I forgot to mention that a while ago, so she reminded me earlier today. So I just wanted you to know that's in the bill also.
What's our growth in the last few years?
Well, I mean, we're 10
Well, we've
elementary,
already
10
approved
secondary.
23
23 is.
for next year already,
And
but that's not including the secondary and other special
That's
ed.
115,000 right there.
That's right.
Doesn't even count the out years.
And Kendall, Comal, Hayes, and Guadalupe County are four of the fastest growing counties in the nation. I'm just saying, but yet this bill is getting passed on this corridor and the corridor around Houston, that it's the fastest growing in the nation, and we're aiming. Sorry, I downshifted, Wayne.
It's another long position that all this unfunded mandates.
That's correct. So I failed to mention that earlier. So that's the kind of recurring cost things that we're worried about, that, it's funded for 2 years even. Do they just change, do they just unfund it, in 2 years? So this, now is dream world. And by the way, the purple you've already approved, Wayne, color coded those.
Right.
And then in this context, those don't look that bad, but now, are we ready to flip?
Well,
Okay.
the 2.7 is not etched in ice either.
No, sir.
It is as far as House Bill 3, if we use the original House Bill 3, but that'll be based on, 3.5 revenue increase?
Well, the 2.7 right now, we just went ahead and calculated as if none of that passes, because we don't know enough right now.
Right.
So
Well, even the House Bill had 3.5 cap, if I remember right.
Well, the 2.7, if I could interject, this follows through from the format of taking this year's budget and rolling it forward and just taking in the revenue increase. Oh, I see what you're saying.
No, he's right.
I got you.
Yeah, he's
No,
right,
you're
but this is even more optimistic,
So that is
because we
right.
calculated this
You're right.
number before the House
I
said,
did.
okay, we've got.
You based on 7% what we had last year. We're not gonna
Right.
get that. We're gonna
Right,
get half.
what we need to ask for right now, that's very good, Mr. Penley, we need to ask for a run that adjusts, see, we got those runs of the 7.8 before they decided that they've got to swallow the pill at 2.5.
Right.
Now, the fact that we haven't gotten a run makes me think that they think it's gonna get negotiated out, and they're everybody's putting down markers, but I think we need to ask for a run.
Both the Senate and the House have varying versions of it, 2.5 or 3.5 or
Right.
whatever, so they're
And I
both
think-
trying to come up with reduction.
It's timely to do that because, when they're in conference, they need to know that we're looking at it at that granular of a level, you know, like, wait a minute, can we even count on the 7.8 now?
Because that would change your calculation as far as what,
Right.
property tax revenue.
All right, we'll check. I'll wear a Keppel out on the way home. Here in a minute. Not wearing him out, talk to him. Talk with him. Here, just a little bit. That's a good observation. All right, we ready to flip the page?
So if you flip it,
This story ends badly, so I'm gonna just, spoiler alert, you know, this is a horror story, so, but,
Titanic. Okay, so same thing then, but with an additional set of columns there. So on the left is revenue, and as what I was just mentioning is rolling forward from current year to next year with the increased enrollment. The funds available, the projected additional revenue of the 2.7, and then in the middle, the additions to budget. Again, in the purple, already board approved, but below it, you'll see in the beige, the pending additions of those positions that have still not been approved, that are still in the need queue, so to speak. Totaling that in with the net impact to funds available being a negative 1.5 million, if they were to be approved. Right now, with what the board has approved and where we sit now, just on this projection of this budget, it would be an impact funds available of about $93,000.
so
If-
we're calling that balance.
We're there.
We're stopping right there. So tonight, originally, we were going to ask you to approve special ed F, secondaries, teachers, and we just decided against it because we didn't, in essence, then we're creating a deficit budget if everything's, and we didn't want to just like de facto create a deficit budget. So we're not asking for those to be approved tonight. That is part of the reason that we've scheduled a workshop on May the 28th. Hopefully, if we have an answer, we're gonna, if we feel like we have the wiggle room, we're gonna ask the board, I just wanna be real clear, to approve, we're gonna do a budget update, but go ahead and approve those because we think we can get it done and not go into a deficit budget.
So then, to the right then, in orange, the possible expenditure additions of, we put in for a 2% raise, the other staffing and the TASB salary recommendations, net in, all done, would be at a deficit of about $4.8 million, if all of that were to be approved going forward.
Now, you put the 2% in there because that's the typical starting point assumption that we've been doing. So
Yes,
just
sir.
for you to look at a number.
So the
TASB salary's been done, Linda's already presented it, and that's the total of the recommendations that the board's already reviewed and agreed to, not approved, but agreed conceptually to. And by the way, the other staffing is $1 million of the $3 million that we've held in deferment for the last 4 years, just to go ahead and get started on some of that. I mean, we had a really good conversation today that there's a point with all of our scorecards, the way we track measures, you know, on performance with everything from, you know, cleanliness to work orders and all that, that there's a point where you get so lean that we have to ask to rewrite SMART goals and lower our standards. If that makes sense. I mean, if you can't staff it at a certain point, then it's wrong to tell your staff to hit best in workplace standards when you're staffed at 75% of best in workplace. Okay, I just want to make sure, I'm not necessarily talking about the classroom at this point. I'm talking about, we've deferred in other areas. But I would make an argument that if you continue to use class size waivers and things like that, you almost have to do the same thing also. Like how, you can't really hold to the same standard. You know, when we were at 22 to 1, if now we're at 26 to 1, you can't hold at the same standard. And so that's a philosophical shift, that if we have to use that tool in the toolbox to balance this thing in the future, then we're gonna have to like really reconsider our metrics. I don't think we can reconsider the 4 priorities. I just think you have to take the 4-year goals and you have to recalibrate them, because we don't want to get frustrated at trying to hit stuff when really we're just trying to, you said, well, the other day, it's just stay alive, you know. We're not at, it's survival, you know, we're at, let's do our core function, let's do it the best we can.
We're just trying to trip water for a better diet.
That's right, and wait for a 2-year for a better day. That's exactly right.
So on the 28th, we'll have a better idea.
Hopefully. It, by law, ends at midnight on the 27th, unless it goes to special session. They have to pass a budget by midnight on the 27th, unless they throw in the towel and the governor calls special session.
In that case, you can call immediately for the next day.
You would think, and I think the chances, since the teacher pay raise is on the chopping block here, the chances of them wanting to extend this session into June is nil. Is what happens in June. All the teachers are available to go to Austin en masse.
Won't be the first time they've done that.
I know, and they know that, so I think we'll know our answer, good, bad, or ugly, on the 27th. Because I don't think anyone has an appetite for summer camp at the Capitol.
Maybe we should take a snow day and go.
Well, actually, I'm gonna brag on some of our teachers today that took personal leave and went in every corner of the building. You know what, I'm really proud of them, so I wanna say this, that, you know, they weren't advocating for a pay raise, they were advocating for districts and for kids. And they were saying, a year from now, if I'm $5,000 richer and I have 3 more kids in my classroom to pay for it, shame on you. That's what our teachers told senators today. I mean, I wonder how many districts can say that you have teachers that are taking personal days to go look representatives in the eye and say, we're here for a greater good, not, we just can't be bought off, which is in essence what's happened. So I think, some of the other things that are on there, just 101, it's either balanced budget, deficit budget, and we try to regroup. So if on May the 28th, Ms. Seaver, on that day, when we know what we know, instead of, right now we don't know what we don't, we know what we don't know, but then we'll know what we know, and we know, what the bottom line is, I guess. There's some decisions to be made, of course, and I hope it's closer to the $8 million, and we're kind of, do we do this or do we do that, right? But we want everybody to be ready, because if it's closer to 0, if we do that, well, it's just, if you do that 10, is there an appetite for a $1.5 million deficit budget? Knowing that there haven't been one in 15 years, 20, 25 years.
25.
Yeah. So, and by the way, they're in the Senate plan on Monday. I know I keep going back and piling on. We found out that they had in that bill also that districts would be prohibited from seeking a tax ratification election for the next 2 years.
And on top of that, you have to have a deficiency audit to even get down that road.
Even after that, but right now it's a prohibition to even do it. So in other words, we're not gonna give teachers a raise and then have districts going and saying, you sunk us, we're having to do a tax ratification election right at the same time that we're running for re-election. So all that, so they're just gonna bar it. And one of the things for the next few weeks that we're gonna have to really watch is, we had heard that they might provide a grandfather clause to that if a school board had already had it as a discussion item for 1920. And so we talked to a consultant today, and they felt like if that passes, and that's if, and it's not in the House, by the way, so it's probably not going to happen, because it's not even like a part of, I think they're gonna take everything that's not in both of them and just whack those off, or put those as chess pieces over to the side. It's almost like jury selection. If you get that one, I get that, so that would be like a poison pill, that like, if you're getting that, we're getting this. But our expert today said that they felt like, since the board had adopted my areas of focus, and it included studying the next bond and the possibility or a tax ratification, and you all voted on it, that reflects the seriousness of the board, that's an option that has to be considered. So they feel like you probably are covered already. It might not hurt, we're gonna watch. We might put it as a part of my legislative update at the May board meeting, again on the agenda. Does everybody understand why it might go on there? Because then we could say, here's 2 different meetings that we were talking about it. And I think we've concluded that doing it in summer of 19, there's just too many variables. We don't even, that's too, but what we're worried about now is that they're prohibiting it for 2021, if that's the only safety net we have. So we just wanted to make y'all aware. I didn't want y'all to be surprised when on the May agenda, it says that under the legislative update. And superintendent report on the status of, possibility of tax ratification in case the Senate, you know, gets their way. We won't word it that way, but, you know, in case it all goes off the track in the conference committee or whatever. I forgot to mention that earlier, but.
It was on.
Was it on there?
Yes, sir, we were getting to there.
Guess the prosecution rests. Any questions?
I know that if the Senate version comes out and they push that $5,000 and you head out to raise it, we will be responsible for everything else above that, taxes and everything else. So the $5,000 goes straight to the teacher. The district will be responsible for everything over and above.
Yeah, and that's a really good observation. So when I got off the phone last Friday night about 9 p.m. and one of our senators hung up, and I'm just being dead serious about this. You know, I just said, you know, was there anything I said that, or any question I asked, you know, that was outlandish? Answer, no. Now this is staffers, right? And I said, what would you do if you're me? I'd get ready to have a TRE. In other words, and that, I mean, that's saying this ends with y'all helping us pay for all this.
And the whole idea behind the TRE, if I remember correctly, was they would fund basic education, and that was for anything when.
That's exactly right. So it applies into, you're exactly right. It applies into
basic.
basic.
TRE for basic education.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So now it's not this list of stuff we want to do, it's to pay for the hole that we just got put in. That's exactly right. And so it just, I mean, it just, and actually it wasn't necessarily about the TRE, and I wasn't really trying to drive on the TRE. I was just trying to, am I exaggerating when we make a chart like this? You know, that's what I was trying to like tease out of them. And I came back, I think I called you that Friday night and I said, our chart is correct. I mean, it is correct. In fact, I think it's worse than what we have on our chart, which you had looked at 2 weeks ago and said you had to take medication and go to bed or whatever. Actually, you watched the Senate hearing and then you looked at this and then you,
And took some medication and passed out. Just listen to the House Education, Senate Education Committee was like, are you people insane?
yeah, and I'll remind you that I was in a TRS board meeting that while you were texting me incessantly for 8 hours. But that's all right. I like to multitask.
I mean,
so.
every hour it's just like, this can't get any worse. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It's like, I don't know where they're trying to go with this. That's my whole question.
I think we're seeing the convergence of a lot of campaign promises that can't be afforded, and no one's willing to step up and say, okay, we know everybody promised a chicken in every pot, you know, back in your districts, but we can't pay for this, and no one's willing to budge on their promise. So now we have all their promises piled into one. And that those 3 budget hawks that usually go along with the lieutenant governor, just speaking frankly, voted present, not voting, because they know the price tag is way beyond what's affordable. And so they don't want to vote no because they're generally supportive of the lieutenant governor, but they're also saying we're not even close on the numbers here. Is that on purpose?
Nobody I saw an article the other day on Texas Tribune. This will probably be the last best chance that the legislature has for the next 6 years.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because they'll do it this time around, we have redistricting coming up next time, nobody's gonna touch education next year. And they'll figure what to do, and those people will come in the next year, they're not gonna touch it then. So our only chance will probably be 2025 before they even touch it again. By then, if this continues on, there's not gonna be a district in the state that's gonna have fund balance.
I agree, and I think that is good, and I just want to remind everybody, I think I said it one time before, HB3 is the culmination of 6 years of work too. It's not, this was 1159 or 1179 of Huberty, not Huberty, of ACOG, Jimmy Don ACOG, 1179. This 1179 became the framework that went through the Commission on Public Education, all that. That became the framework for that study, and then that became HB3. So it's almost like they had a 6-year plan. Like it's the closest I've ever seen our state government have. And it's getting side railed for political promises that can be afforded. That's it's pretty shocking to me, and I guess I shouldn't be shocked anymore after 17 years of budget cuts. By the way, I've been superintendent for 17 years. I've cut budgets for 17 years.
Just say it's not surprising, it is disappointing.
It is disappointing when people are supposed to represent the whole state. But I get it, the next election has the new census, and then they redraw the lines, and then that's how the votes go for the next 10 years. U.S. congressional seats and state, both, our state reps draw. So there's a lot on the line. So I think, and I really do think it's fitting that that's the politics that's going, that's, because I have to square it up in my head, how could this possibly be happening? And that's the only rational reason I can come up with, is just so many campaign promises to get reelected so that you can be part of drawing the lines.
And already looking forward to the next election.
Yep. May the 28th, and then if y'all are ready, if y'all want weekly updates on this, or I guess you can just follow my Twitter.
If y'all don't feel comfortable doing the 28th, the session ends on the 27th at midnight. If y'all don't feel comfortable on the 28th, in the next couple of days, that, depending when that bill comes out at midnight on the 27th.
Yeah,
I have any information.
I think usually, that's fair, and I appreciate that, and it may come down to that. Usually, by that point, we know exactly what's in it, and it's just, they may vote at midnight, but we already know what a yes.
I'm just thinking about floor amendments or something like that.
Right, now that, we'll have to just keep watching all that, but we'll have a whole 5 hours the next day to get all that put together.
I think we have two members of the public here, if they'd like to stand up or offer any comments or ask any questions.
You don't have to, but if you have questions or comments.
The only thing that I'd like to say, I appreciate all that you're doing. I understand that it's a really tough situation. I know I've been among those that have written to the representatives and gone up there to see them, and I want you all to feel the responsibility of choosing things within the district budget that are very closely related to helping students. Making this a district where our students graduate with the best opportunities available to them. And so sometimes when I don't know the budget, and I think that's part of my frustration, is I don't know where all of the money is going. I do sometimes hear things that I think might not be in the best interest of our students, and maybe make the district look better, but aren't really part of what makes this the quality district that it is to this point. And I really don't want to see the district go in a direction because of funding that is not representative of what we should be.
Are you okay with me responding?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that's a great observation. So we have a $120 million M&O budget. That's what we're talking about here. 86 or 87% of it is staff. And so, so what is that's left then? 16, 17, 18 million. So, and I know that's a lot of money, but that amount that's left after we pay everybody is not that much anymore. We've almost eliminated it. And so, this is for everybody in the room. If any great idea is accepted. There's nothing left. If this doesn't get corrected, there's nothing left but programs. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality. There's nothing that we believe right now, there's nothing that we're doing that's not lining up towards some student subgroups' success. And what happens is that, you know, parents, you know, we're gonna eliminate orchestra. Guess who gets mad? The orchestra parents. And we get all these studies of how it, you know, makes everyone a scientist by age 27, you know, and all that. I mean, just, being funny, but you know, or you're gonna eliminate, and I mean, there's really nothing left. I'm just saying to the whole group here, there's nothing left in this budget for us to cut other than programs. I mean, you didn't cut those 206 administrators. I always hear people, what good do they do? Good luck getting all your balanced budgets and all your work done. I mean, there's a reason that all these people go to master's and PhD programs to learn how to manage things, you know, and I would argue that those two, take those 206 and go get another 206 from anywhere in the community and plug them into it, and your budget will not be balanced at the end of that, because all that 206 knows how to balance a budget. Because most of them have been here for 10 years or more, and everybody's on this bare bones budget. So I hear what you're saying. So I hope I can join you in frustration, actually, that we're at this point. And I think y'all probably went and said that to our state reps if I was guessing that why is the district at this point?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think we understand, you know, to some degree. We just really hope that I think that there are some possibilities. No, I'm not there. I'm not in on the meetings and the discussions of what gets chosen as the thing that best helps our students. But I can't help but think right now with what I've seen and what I've heard so far, that there can't be some way to keep things that really, really benefit the students.
So I'm just gonna say, if anybody in this room has an idea of anything that we're doing that doesn't benefit students, I need it before I get in my car. For everybody in this room.
Do you have a copy of the budget? Like that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's online. We've got the last 10 years' budgets online. We've passed every indicator.
And
We've gotten gold
yeah.
stars from the comptroller
Yes.
for the transparency of our budget. So yes, they're all online, and they have been for the last 15 years.
But it's hard to see in there, I guess, where all of that, because I have taken a look at some of that too. But it really is hard for the outside person that doesn't know, you know, where all of
Let me just say it this way. Everybody around the outside of this room has given their career to public education of children. Nobody around the outside of this room wakes up and says, I think we ought to cut something that a child's program is in. Not one.
Some of us on the inside of the room have done.
And some on the inside have been public educators. And so if you see anything.
When you have the state cutting your funding every 2 years, we're getting down to 38% the state is funding for us. The state's objective is, at least a great many of the state leaders, their objective is to do away with public education.
As we know.
Bottom line, as we know it. And that's the whole thing. They figure out, you know, sooner or later people are gonna give up because we don't have money to do the things that people want us to do. And they're gonna look somewhere else for it. And we're trying very hard to give students the options that we feel like they need to be successful in life. But again, the folks up in Austin who are making the decisions are wanting us to not be able to do that. Budgets are built on the campuses. We don't build the budgets. The budgets are built on the campuses. Most of you guys know that. We get a budget printout. We see, okay, this is what the campuses want.
I would add need to that now.
Yeah.
We're past one.
Because we can't give them what they want. We have to get down to barely what they need. And you know, we try to have a well-rounded student. And that includes a lot of programs that some people may think, well, why do you need that? Because it creates a well-rounded student. And even with those programs, we can't do everything we want to do for those students inside those programs.
So moving forward in the absence of, and again, I appreciate the fact that you took the time to come tonight and have the intestinal fortitude to speak up. I really, really, really do appreciate that, because too many people don't. And then, you know, they just go away, tweet away or Facebook away, and, you know, not get the chance to come and actually talk face to face like the world used to be. But you know, I'm gonna be hopeful for the next 30 days or 20 days that this gets worked out. If it doesn't, we hadn't even started with the pain. I mean, if we go down the road you just brought up, that it's 6 years, just saying the pain has just begun, and it's gonna be hard, and there's no one around the outside of this room that wants to do that. I've not had one of them yet say, hey, I volunteered $2 million out of my budget because I looked at it and it really wasn't useful, you know. Yeah, that's a little bit joking, but I mean, we have processes for efficiency too. You know, that we might think we've had to because we've had a low targeted revenue assignment since 2007. We didn't necessarily volunteer for that, but we got assigned that on a temporary bill that's still the law of the land. But I don't want to like discount with like this prediction of doom and gloom. I'm just saying there's a lot riding on the next 20 days. There's a lot more than just this next year. I'm gonna just point out, we can't balance the budget next year if we hire special ed teachers and secondary teachers as it exists right now. Now, that's not core services. Now, secondary teachers and special ed teachers. We can't balance it. It puts us 1.5 in the hole, right? Is that the way?
That's his first year.
That's right.
Well,
And that's not with a $5,000 a year raise.
I've been dealing with budgets in this school district since 1984, except for 1 year. And we've never come in with a budget that hadn't had to be cut many, many times over before it finally got to the school board.
And that's about when the school
That's what
lawsuit
happens.
started, and it's been a series of lawsuits since then. So, I don't want it to end almost like we're arguing, I'm not, it's just, you know, I think you have a good understanding now maybe of kind of where we are.
To speak to your point, I guarantee it, I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure I can speak for most school board members in the state. We don't wanna do that either. We don't wanna cut programs, because we know if we cut programs, we are affecting students.
Yeah,
We're
I should have
affecting our
said that, Mr.
community.
Finley. There's no one on, I meant to go to that, but there's no one on the inner circle that wants to do it either, I assure you, and these folks are actually elected, so I mean, why would an elected official want to cut a program? I mean, it's
And
preposterous.
we're parents and grandparents, and we know that these cuts are gonna have detrimental effects, not just this year, next year, but for years to come.
That's right.
And because what we do today sets in motion trends and programs and lives that we're gonna be affecting maybe decades from now, we don't even know what those effects are gonna be. And for the legislature to be sitting there saying, we're gonna continue to cut, we're gonna destroy public education, that's what their goal is. I don't think they have any clue what that entails going down the road. If you don't have something to replace it with, how can you go down the road of getting rid of something that has become as important as public education has in this country for the last 120 years? That doesn't even make, in any way you want to slice that pie, that makes no sense. There's nothing out there to replace it. Why are we talking about replacing it? And yet, if you starve it, you're going to end up killing it, which means something has to come along. It's what we do with 5.2 million students. Just leave them to their own devices and their parents likewise. So,
Well, and when you're talking, Mr. Finley, and just to give a good illustration, I think of that, you know, we have 12 social workers in this district. That's not necessary. It's not required. And, you know, so you gotta ask yourself, why do we have, you know, 11 of them currently are outsourced through an outside agency, and we have one on our own. And so then you start to ask that we repurpose the second one to be a truancy officer. So why do you want a truancy officer or a safety coordinator? Why have that? That's not teaching math to a 4th grader. But it just, we're in local parentis for, you know, 8 to 9 at secondary, 16 hours a day. Do what?
Another school shooting today.
And there was another school shooting today in Denver, that's right. And so it's just like, you know, and I would argue that that's like really, really lean, and we're trying to figure out, can we get by with not even that much? So we're at a point where, and for some of those kids, I think the people that pass the laws, either maybe it is Mr. Pivito, there are days at the end of the day I feel like that's true, you know, kind of like it's an effort. I can see that they get a lot of donations from companies that would love to fill the gap of public education if it fails. You know, so I can follow the money, I'm not stupid. And then at other times I just worry that as they drive from their gated community in the Woodlands to Austin in a suburban with smoky glass and someone driving them, they're not looking at the 63% of the kids that are from low socioeconomic households that are cutting grass and that they're driving through their neighborhoods. And I really wonder if they can be empathetic with people that don't look like them and don't live like them. And so it's easy to say, go cut it.
Yeah.
If you don't look like me and I don't even know, I mean, I can't even relate to you trying to live on $15 an hour or $16 an hour or whatever. And that, I worry that that's more at what's at play here. There's just a lack of empathy. So I would rather get reelected than actually make hard decisions that might get me unelected in order to protect poor kids. And by the way, we are one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and we're one of the fastest growing states in the nation of kids from households of low to moderate means. And we're not making the adjustments for that right now. And you can play that game in the short term, but it is an ugly game in the long term if you don't do that. So that's why we have 12 social workers. Because we choose to do that instead of sending kids home hungry. So we choose to stuff a backpack full of peanut butter and crackers and stuff where I'm like trying to pick, do I want to go to Chili's or Starbucks on the way home? And they're going home with zilch, except for what a social worker stuck in a backpack. That's what we're talking about here.
And on the fiscal side of that, you don't get the 38% or whatever the state is funding now if you don't have somebody in the seat at 10 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
So we have to make sure that, that's why there's a truancy officer. Because if there's no, we don't get anything from the state if there's not a kid in that seat at 10 in the morning.
And that's why we have extracurricular activities, because research undoubtedly shows that if they're involved in an extracurricular activity, they come to school.
They come to
That's
school.
what
They
have
come to
because you
school,
can't
they
play.
behave better in school, and
Right.
they do better in school.
Right.
Their
And-
grades and just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I do want to say a couple things as far as the extracurricular. I would love to see more of that in elementary, in that part.
Okay, now we're not gonna laugh because you just heard all this, right? We would
No,
love.
yes,
Yeah,
I
okay,
know, but
okay.
I just think if we're talking about that, I think another thing that,
Let me say this, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. There is a lot of agreement in this room. It's just the laugh
I get
is,
it.
where's part of the budget, I mean, where does that really come up? There's not
I get
one
it.
person in this room that wouldn't love to have elementary art, not
Yeah.
one person.
no, I get it, I do completely understand all of that, and that's why I don't come with all of the additions. I do, and I completely understand, the economically disadvantaged. I would hate to see education go so far to the basics that they lose the exceptional, and they lose the exceptional to charters or to privates, and I would hate to see that. And I do, one of the positive things that I'd like to bring in, and we were there when the House bill was voted to go to the floor.
Right.
And there, I was pleased with what I heard from that education committee during that time period. There were some very passionate senators that didn't care what it took, they were gonna get something to the schools.
Okay, so
And-
it was representatives.
No, this was the Senate.
It
So
was,
this was Monday, or
This
was
was
this?
last,
it was when they passed it to the
to
floor.
the
It
floor,
was
the Wednesday, last Wednesday.
When
So
they,
that was the
when there's only three
That was the-
against, and it was,
Yeah.
it was like,
Okay.
Yeah, that
Last
was- that
Wednesday,
was-
they voted for it to go to the floor for
committee-
discussion.
Yeah, because the House
Okay.
bill only had one vote against it, only had one person
Right,
vote against it.
Stickland.
Well,
It was 148
There
to
was a couple
Stickland.
of no votes.
Do what?
It was 148 to Stickland.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
sorry.
Was he from Beaumont?
But I was pleased with most of the discussion that was happening there within the education committee on the Senate floor. So that, just as a positive, I know it may not end with our perfect scenario, and it probably won't end with what we want to see happen. But there are people, there are leaders that are fighting and that want to do what it takes to get some money to the schools.
Okay, so I watched the same hearing, and their 8 of those 15 or 12, their hope was that you believed what they said that day. Because their vote and their campaign donors are different than what
Yeah,
they
didn't.
So I have some words to say right from the heart. Thank you so much, Dick. And so I just say, don't believe the acting job that's being done out on the floor. I know I'm jaded.
Their vote didn't
But
reflect what they
I'm
were
sitting,
saying.
I watch in shock. I cannot believe you're the person saying that to be watched on the live broadcast, when I just talked to you last week and you told us that, when I asked, what about bus drivers? I was told to my face, tell them to just wait their turn. And then I get a speech where it says, every employee needs, you just told me to tell bus drivers to wait their turn. And so it's just a caution to everybody in this room, don't believe those grandstanding, and I know that's jaded, but that's all I got, I guess.
Well,
You don't have to convince me.
Well, and that's, so, but I actually hope that some of that wins out by the end of this week, I really do. So I want to, I don't want to end on a negative thing, but I won't believe anything until May the 28th, I guess is what I'm saying. When all those words fall to the ground and the numbers get added up, then I'll know if they hurt us or they helped us.
They were advocating for this side.
Pardon?
They were advocating for this side.
well, no, this was the HB3 going forward.
Right, but
So
it's
this
the
was
Senate.
and I get.
This is really important.
No.
This is really important.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was the Senate committee substitute for HB3. That's this right side of the page. So they were making their speeches to add this stuff in. So it's the Senate this is really important for everybody. The Senate has to kick out the committee substitute. So Dee wrote it right here, committee substitute for HB3. So it's actually SCSHB.
Well, the result would have been killing it completely.
That's correct.
So that,
That's
I mean,
correct.
it was moving forward, not
Right,
ending it.
so
it's
what
not-
you saw the speeches though were for everybody to tag all
Okay.
this stuff in that they can't pay for. So yeah, they were passionate about that.
Right.
Now I understand, they were.
Well, yes, and I'm saying what they said, was, and it was not all of them, I will say it was not all of them, and there were some that were, I could see where you're saying, that were saying it for the sake of their
Right.
their election. I understand that, but there were people there that gave me faith in the field of education.
So I'll close with this. I hope to have my faith restored. But it is shattered at this point after this last 2 weeks. And I do want to thank you for not taking, you may go to social media and blast me after this is over. I won't see it if you do because I don't look at that stuff. But I appreciate the fact that you came and had a discussion face to face. I really do. As opposed to just sitting back and telling whatever story you want to tell. And thank you for sitting here and listening to all this. And it seems like to some degree understanding it. That's all I have, Mr. Westbrook, or all we have.
Any closing comments, board members? Yeah, Robert.
We said 90 minutes, yeah, 91.
Meeting's adjourned, 7:31. Thank you very much for coming.